Now, when Skool launched the freemium feature a number of months ago, most coaches and community builders like myself thought that this was it. This was the model that was going to fix all of our problems, and it would mean that we could focus everything into one community, and one community could be the hub of our entire business, and that they would continuously update the features that we needed to make sure that it basically solved every type of solution that low ticket and high ticket and everybody needed on the platform. But this hasn't been the case, and they just haven't done the updates that we assumed were going to be coming. And to be honest, I've actually just found out from some insider information that these updates potentially are never coming, or not for a very, very long time, which I'm going to speak to more later on. But the first thing to know is that freemium is still a fantastic option. It's still a great way to start your community business. It's low friction and easy to start. You obviously only have to have one group for everything still, so it is easier in the sense that moving from free to paid and not worrying about paying for two community memberships, having to pay $100 and then another $100 is a big commitment for a lot of people starting a community. So in that sense, having one community is fantastic, and it is a lower cost option. You can obviously start with the $9 account, but even if you did upgrade, you've only got to worry about one community moving forward. You can do most of the models in some way, shape or form with a freemium community. So you can have free on the outset, so you could actually start to make and bring in your leads for your business. And then you could charge the freemium level inside and even have a VIP option if you wanted to have a second tier inside. So it gave us the benefit of free on the front end, and then obviously being able to charge in the back end for subscription models and unlocking multiple courses, live events and calls and so on. But it was really all built on the assumption that most of us sort of took it on board with, that certain features and certain things were going to be coming later on. And one of those main things was having a way to separate the feed slightly. And what most of us were asking for, we thought would be pretty simple, pretty straightforward, was having categories, having some type of tiered categories inside that wasn't necessarily splitting the feed, but it meant that some posts would only be seen by some people in the community. And this meant that we would have a way to communicate privately with people that had upgraded. So it would give an element of exclusivity, but the main thing was being able to communicate. So perhaps if you were doing high ticket and people wanted to get feedback on something that is private and only for paid members, then they could share that in the community under that particular tiered category, and the free people wouldn't see and wouldn't be commenting on things that they shouldn't be commenting on. But it also meant that we could send out updates without people getting confused, which is something I've seen. When I send out updates about a program that's been updated, people start asking, oh, where is it? Or I'm confused, didn't you just update it? And it's like, no, that's the paid one. It's the paid part, not the free part. So it does lead to a little bit of confusion. Now, obviously, there's benefits to that. The idea was that the more people could see, if they could see the calls had to be unlocked at, a premium level, and then the same for the courses, that would sort of give people FOMO and push people to upgrade inside. But the main thing was not being able to communicate with the paid members. We just have to, unless you're going to individually message people one by one in the DMs, suddenly you didn't have a way to communicate with premium level people. And it looks like there's no feature coming. So basically I had a DM conversation with Sam, so Sam Ovens, the owner, and he was basically saying that it's really, really difficult to add this feature. So it's really complicated and difficult for them. Now, I don't know, obviously, if that's true. I've heard other people that are programmers saying, no, it's super easy. But Sam seems like a genuine guy, so I trust that information. And he's saying that it's really quite difficult for them to separate that feed in any way. And he was actually asking what sort of things could they do to potentially give us some of the features that we need. Now, I gave him some information, and, who knows if those updates will ever come. But I can tell that it's not really top priority for them. They're really focusing on discovery and optimization this year and so on. So I can't really see us having a way to separate categories in the feed anytime soon. So the fact that we've now heard this and we now know that this is potentially the reality, then we have to start understanding that this is freemium. Freemium might get an update in, say, 6 months, but it's probably not really coming this year. So that means that we have to understand where the main focus of the platform is, in my opinion, is on low ticket and the subscription model and hobbyist channels and expanding the platform. You can tell with the Skool games, it's based on $100 or less each month per subscription. So the focus really is on the hobbyist and the subscription side, which means if you're a high ticket person or someone that's doing cohorts and so on, you probably aren't going to get the flexibility you want from this freemium model. So you're not really going to get any shared space anytime soon. It's going to be a single feed. Their main focus is going to be on low ticket for sure moving forward. So the only thing that we can separate is going to be calls and courses. So it is just like subscription calls and subscription courses, which I created a video on this before when they first launched it and said I was a little bit disappointed, but it is basically the same, and that's potentially not going to change. Now, although there were rumors and they were saying that they would update it if there was demand, and there was definitely demand, but we haven't heard anything from them. And now after hearing from Sam saying that it's more complicated, then it sounds like they're kind of going to resist that for as long as they can. So I think the decision that we have to come to as coaches and creators and community builders is to understand what model is going to work best for you moving forward. Because freemium is still great, but there is a lot of limitations if this is it. If this is not going to improve, then there is a lot of limitations. And I think I'm seeing some of this work because I've now used two communities. I've used freemium, I've used paid, I've used a number of pretty much all of the different models over the last couple of years. And there are limitations and things that will get in the way of what you're doing in terms of the experience for the free people and also the experience for the paid people. So you have to really understand what it is that you want moving forward for your community and your business with your goals. Now, freemium, if your value lies in the live calls that you actually do. So if the live calls and the courses contain most of the value that people will be paying for, then that's great. That's problem solved because it means that people actually want the course and the calls, and showing up to those is where the value is. Therefore, maybe it's a monthly model that you're going to be doing, and I'm seeing that freemium is working more for sort of the mid-ticket range. So things below $1,000, I would say, in terms of annual. Anything above, you're getting into the realm where people want a little bit more depth, a little bit more sort of deep dive, where they're really surrounded by people only doing the thing that they want to be doing. So I think mid to low high ticket, less depth is what you can potentially get away with in the freemium, or maybe a low ticket monthly if you're in that particular area. I'm not a huge fan of low ticket monthly. I think you have to be commanding a large amount of volume in terms of views to get the conversions that you potentially want. But it does obviously depend on your niche and the traffic sources that you've got. But in terms of simplicity as well, if you actually really just want simplicity, and I mean, you can join our community. I'll put a link in the video description if you would like more support on the type of model you should potentially do, the type of traffic sources, and you can see that what we're doing inside our community and our business as well. Again, I'll link to that in the video description. But the reason I originally went for the freemium model was for the simplicity, having everything in one space. And I had seen that you get the brain drain when you have two communities. So if you've got two communities, you're going to get a brain drain. So you have to make sure that you're putting a lot of work into both communities to keep them going. So it's going to be additional investment in terms of money for the extra community, but also time and energy. So you have to be able to commit to that. And there's an extra degree of complexity in terms of moving people from free to paid. But there are benefits that come with that as well. So you have to understand that is the value enough in your course and the calls that people are going to be able to show up to. So if people can show up to those calls and they're at a good time for them and there's enough of them and so on, then that's great. If there's enough value in that, fantastic. And it also depends on the amount you want to be charging and then how much complexity you want in your business. Now, where you might want two groups, and this is where I'm seeing a lot of people sort of walking away from freemium and moving back to this or focusing on this, is where you're higher ticket or doing more cohort. Because the separation is important for sort of deep dive and immersion. So if you want that experience for your members and you really want a separate environment, so your members need a different environment for the work that they're doing, or they're doing something in a particular time scale, like a cohort, where they're all moving towards that goal in the same time, in the same direction, in the same way, and they're working together. If you want that experience without other people getting in the way, then obviously 2 groups is going to be the option for you. And also, if you want more urgency options, the issue with freemium to a degree, and there are ways around this, and we do talk about this inside our community and we address it, and there are many different things that we can do to improve this. But the issue with freemium is that if it's on all of the time and it's evergreen and people can sign up whenever they want, you have limited ways other than price that you can drive urgency. And you don't want to focus on price for your business long term. Otherwise, you're always trying to be the cheapest, or you're always trying to do discounts and so on. And people are always focused on buying with the price. And they're the type of people that are going to cancel after 1 month and not take action. They only bought because it was a good deal. Therefore, they're not going to be committed buyers. So we don't really want to drive urgency on price long term. It's fine for your beta launch and so on, but it's not a good long-term strategy that I see. And the benefit of having 2 communities is that you can drive more urgency, because your community is just about free then, and then you can sell fixed amounts of cohorts or fixed amounts of numbers of people you're going to take across, or it's real FOMO where people have to apply but they can't see the community, and you can decide if they're going to get in or not. You have many more levers that you can pull to drive that type of urgency. And then you have to be someone that doesn't mind the extra cost. So if the extra cost of 2 communities and the extra time and expense as well, in terms of time, if you don't mind that, then I would say that for many people, especially doing high ticket, anything above $1,000, this is going to be a better option for you. 2 communities moving forward, especially if this is a reality, because then it also creates a better free experience. And what do I mean by this? Well, what I've seen is, and this is anecdotal, I have seen that many people are a little bit less active in freemium communities than they were in free. And the only way I can look at this is that I think people feel like they're going to be sold to, or they are potentially always getting sold to. And because maybe they're in multiple communities now, they're probably getting a feeling or bad experiences and stuff moving forward now where there's pressure put on them. And they obviously see you doing something similar-ish. Maybe you're doing it in a nicer way, but they're now getting conditioned to that, and they're starting to feel like they're going to be sold to. And therefore, if they see it and they see you have a paid program inside, they're starting to expect, okay, well, fine, you're going to be selling to me. So it really depends what you're selling in terms of if it's a low-ticket upgrade to get access to calls and stuff, not such a big deal. So I'm really seeing that freemium, in my opinion, is more designed for slightly lower ticket. And I could be wrong on this. I'm seeing people use it in many different ways. But I do think having a free community where it's all free, there's nothing being sold inside, and then you occasionally sell and do things for your paid community, I think this works better because it's a better experience for free and it's a better experience for paid, based on the current setup that we've got. But ultimately, both are actually freemium, really. They're both freemium. This is a similar model. You're just doing one with one community and one with 2. So it really is still free to paid. Nothing has really changed there. You're still using the platform with a free to paid option. It's just whether or not you decide to do it all in one community or in 2. So it's worked in the past. It'll continue to work now. I think the hype of freemium has dulled down a bit, but I think so. I mean, I think if they're just not going to change this, I think for many people, 2 communities is going to be a better option. But you really need to ask yourself, what is a better long-term fit for you and your goals? So when starting out and when doing beta launches and so on, I think it's great to start with free anyways. So most people are going to start with free. So I would build that up first. And again, in our free community, we can give you more help on how to set this up and what to do and so on. But I actually would focus more on the free part, and then you can decide later on what you're potentially going to do. But I think you have to think about what long-term experience and what you want to offer in terms of pricing and so on. and then pick the model that's going to work best for you and your financial goals. And you also have to ask, where does the value lie in what you're doing? So if it's more deep dive transformative, then a second community is probably going to be a better option. But if it's more superficial level, just going a little bit deeper, and the calls and the course is enough, then probably freemium will be absolutely fine for you. So let us know in the comments below. What are you going to do? You're going to freemium, you're going to go with 2 communities. And as always, if you would like more help, you can join our free community, which I will link to in the video description. Thanks for watching.